Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another IP Day Webinar Wednesday. Today's topic is the Beginner's Guide to Integrated Education and Training, IET. I'm June Raw, the director for IP Day, and I'm so happy all of you are joining us today on the webinar. Presenting today's webinar is Brian Bush. Brian is the Assistant Director at Atlantic Technical College in Broward County, and we're so happy to have Brian here with us today presenting on this topic. Before we get started, I will go over a few housekeeping rules. Remember that you are in listen-only mode, and that if you have questions, you may type them into your Q&A option on your screen. Brian's gonna be addressing all of your questions at the end of the presentation, but in between some of the slides, he's gonna ask you some questions. So go ahead and answer those questions in the Q&A option. Today's webinar, like all of our webinars, are recorded and it will be available for you to access within 48 hours. All the material is already downloaded on the IP Day website, so you'll have everything that you need to share this document later, have some professional development communities where you're going to be sharing this information with each other, whatever you have that you need. But okay, well, Brian, I'm going to turn it over to you because I know this is very interesting to all of us as we learn more and more about IET.
Great, thanks, June, and welcome everybody. Good afternoon. It's such an honor to be here and spend the next 60 minutes with you today. Today's agenda, we're going to look at what is integrated education and training, and I think we all know what the acronym is, but it's been a bit of a moving target here. So we're going to dive in a little bit deeper and see, what the components of an IET program are that would technically make it one. Why is it important? Not only for our schools and our programs, but for our students and our local workforce. What are the benefits of IET programs? What are the challenges that you have faced in trying to create and implement IET programs? And one that I do want to spend some time on here is how do we change the hearts and minds of everyone in adult ed? Because I know it's been a heavy lift where this shift from what we've traditionally done versus where we want to go towards implementing workforce preparation across a wider spectrum of our programs at all levels and all programs, and finally, what is that really going to look like when we get into the nitty-gritty of how do we implement this, not just in our highest levels of our programs and in little exclusive pockets, but across every classroom. How is that going to look and how are we going to do so? Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is I want to go ahead and launch a poll and just kind of take a temperature and assessment of where everyone thinks they are. So rate your knowledge regarding the criteria for and implementation of integrated education and training. So you should see that poll here in a moment. Okay, so you can see your choices. The basic level, it's a real struggle. A little higher up, you have some basic understanding, but still a lot to learn. The third choice, you're starting to feel a little more comfortable and ready to implement. And then finally, you're ready to co-facilitate this webinar. And I actually, like all of you, I'm not sure that there is a predominant expert out there. So I'm a practitioner. I probably fall between 3 and 4. So don't worry where you are. Just go ahead and try and give us an accurate representation. We certainly understand as this has been a moving target along the way. Okay, so looks like we're starting to get some results here. And I have some basic understanding, but a lot to learn. Can certainly empathize with that, and hopefully we get some answers and some common understanding through the duration of today's webinar. Okay, So we'll go ahead and we'll move on, and we'll take this poll down. Okay, so what is IET? Just back to the basics. What's the definition? What does that really technically mean for us in our programs and at our schools? And it's a combination of three things. So really, when we take away what we're supposed to be doing or what we're trying to do, what we're trying to implement, adult ed, as we've always known it, adult education and literacy activities occurring concurrently and contextually with workforce preparation. So what are those employability skills that you're trying to integrate and build into your adult ed program? And then finally, what is the workforce training, the specific occupational skills that you're trying to build in? So putting all three of those components together simultaneously in one classroom at the same time is really the goal of what's going to define and make an IET program and classroom. And just to dig in a little bit deeper, for a specific occupation or occupational cluster for the purpose of educational and career advancement. So my question for you is, and if you could go ahead and put your answer in the Q&A where you can submit it, what does that phrase mean to you? And more specifically, how is this any different than what has always been done in adult ed? Because I think that's going to be our guiding vision of how we're trying to move forward and answer some of those questions that we laid out in the beginning of why is this important? What are the benefits of IET programs? Okay, and we're starting to get some answers here that it's more career forward focus. The most high demand areas in response to regional and statewide economic demands. It's great. It should revolve around a local needs assessment. It can't just be, whatever you feel like teaching or that's easy to implement as far as a career. It's got to be based around some type of local needs. And I see a lot of comments that it's really changing the focus towards that career goal, that career skills, and that career pathway. So excellent answer. And I feel like we're in a good place with that being the predominant message and vision for where we're going with this. And we got some more coming in. Combination of educational success and workforce readiness. I really like that word readiness. Because I think we've always kind of had that as the pathway of our programs as the next step. But I think now we're talking about how do we make those steps happen simultaneously. So great. Thank you all for participating and sharing some of those answers. Okay, so let's go ahead and just define those three components that we're going to need. Adult education, I think everybody here gets it, understands it. We teach our students the necessary academic and language skills that they're going to need to be successful. We understand what this is. We know what this looks like. This is what we do. This is what our teachers are comfortable with. This is not the area that we need to develop and fill a gap in, because I think this is the part that we really understand well. It's how do we continue to hold on to these skills that we have in this area and then add those other components. So when we look at the other components, workforce preparation activities is one that we have implemented with moderate success from class to class, depending on your school, depending on the priorities, depending on how you've implemented this at your site. This could be happening more or less, and even within the same programs from classroom to classroom, depending on your individual teacher skills at implementing these type of ideas and strategies, could be developing more or less with our students. So what does that mean? Like our employability skills, digital literacy, being able to collaborate and work together, collectively communicate, think critically about material, be creative, using their information and resources to make decisions. What are their soft skills, self-management skills, and all those skills that they're going to need to transition and complete post-secondary successfully. So basically, what does that mean in a classroom setting? And it's kind of like this webinar where right now, I'm not giving you a lot of opportunity to develop these employability skills, because this is basically a sit and get for you, where I'm sharing some information, you're learning some information, and now hopefully the implementation will come later. And these are the types of things, because this is your profession. So what you're going to do with this information is you're going to show me, or you're going to implement a lot of those things based on what we've talked about. You're going to go and collaborate and communicate with the workforce board in your area, career source. You may collaborate and communicate with the technical college, being able to implement the information that you're getting. You're going to have an opportunity to use all of those skills. Those are the same things that our students need to have. We can't really measure those things or teach those things. I can't tell you how to do those things. What I have to do as an instructor is give you opportunities to practice those things. So this is another area where we need to develop with our teachers. How do they give their students opportunities to practice and improve with some of these employability skills? And it's just really got to be built into their programs and on an ongoing basis, through collective decision making, through projects, etc. And I see a comment that came in. The workforce prep is easier because it's more generally applicable to everyone, all types of student goals. And the difficulty is identifying those specific training opportunities that you cited in the previous definition slide. And I absolutely agree. And I think it's great. And that's an excellent point, because it talks about the student goals. And we'll touch on that a few more as we go through today's webinar, and really trying to target and make sure that this is student-centered, and certainly can be different as you sit in front of a room full of various students. So how are these student needs all going to be considered collectively? So excellent point. Thanks for sharing that. And go ahead and moving on to acknowledge this is where the implementation challenges kick in when we look at the workforce training and workforce skills. So this is develop foundational knowledge and workforce skills for high demand career fields or career clusters. Again, these should be based on a local needs assessment. They must be career fields that are in high demand. And how do we start to incorporate this into those other two? I think the other two, when we talk about adult ed, A++ across the board, we start talking about employability skills. I still think you have a lot of teachers out there doing a good job of giving their students opportunities to practice and grow those things. And then this becomes really challenging, because where is our level of expertise? And it may not be in this area. So how do we get the partnerships in place to do this? Or how do we get the curriculum knowledge based on the frameworks to be able to do this successfully across the board? So we'll dig into that a little bit as we go today. But those are the three main components of what's going to make up your IET program. So another piece of this is looking at the career pathway as defined in WIOA. And you can see this includes, as appropriate, education offered concurrently with and in the same context as workforce preparation activities and training for a specific occupation or occupational cluster. Okay, we covered that. Organizes education, training, and other services to meet the particular needs of an individual in a manner that, and I've got this underlined, accelerates the educational and career advancement of the individual to the extent practicable. And I think historically we've had these career pathways where we've handed the student off as they go up the ladder and continue to operate depending on if they drop off, if they meet their short-term goal and feel like, okay, now I'm employed, so I don't need to go on. So not only do we need to get more students through this pipeline, we need to make this opportunity condensed and accelerated where these things are happening simultaneously, so it's not such a long process and such a burden on the student who's already got so many demands going on in their life. A couple asterisk points here: based on regional demand, local needs assessment, and through developing partnerships with some of those other entities like we talked about. So let's get into why is IET important. And what I don't want you to take away from this today, and what I don't think the predominant message should be once we go back to our schools and our programs, and even as teachers, why are we doing this? Well, yeah, it's in WIOA. We've written it into our grants. It is the vision for adult education moving forward in Florida. Those are the reasons why we have to. But I think the real reason that's going to get people motivated and moving in the direction to really trying to implement this in full force is that it's the right thing to do for our students. I think it's going to bring a lot of benefits to your program, and it seems the message from the state is that the local labor markets, this is what they're demanding that we do with our students. It's no longer about meeting minimum basic skills. That's not the end point. We really need to push forward with some of these other higher goals for them. And quite frankly, it's built on equity. The Center for Law and Social Policy examined in their memos for action, how do we bring some additional opportunities for low income, lower skilled people to find some economic success? And this IET plan is the optimum way to go ahead and give them an opportunity to advance their education, advance their skill set, to provide economic mobility for those folks. So that is really our end goal is, our students are going to show up and they're going to have an idea of what they're showing up to our programs for, but really trying to promote this idea of thinking bigger, dreaming bigger goals, and trying to find ways to get our students moving towards a next step, and not just that initial short-term goal, but what are those long-term goals, and helping them realize that there's more out there for them if they take advantage of the opportunities that we're trying to build in some of these career pathways and IET programs. So what are those benefits to the student? Them knowing adult education is not the finish line. I think often they show up and the storm in their lives is so great that they realize they need to come back and they need to learn English better to get a better job, or they need to get their GED in order to get over that next hurdle, because they're facing such monumental challenges that they don't envision any goals past that first initial goal. So us helping them realize that adult education is not the finish line, that there are opportunities for post-secondary, and that there is going to be more things that open up to them the further they go. I don't think our goal is to try and get these students jobs in restaurants or at the mall, while great and maybe better than their perfect, the storm that's going on in their lives right now. But giving them that additional advantage that they possibly can't see that and don't see that in themselves. And we often do see things in others before we can see them in ourselves. Accelerates the completion, credential attainment, and improve success rates. So not only do we want to do this faster for them, but we want to do it more successfully, where we don't lose them along the way, and that they walk away with something tangible that they can go ahead and start and launch their high-paying career with. Again, it's going to revolve around your regional demand. Finally, the basic academic digital employee gaps for all, even with students that go directly into CTE programs. So we're not just talking about students that begin in adult ed. Sometimes students will come and they'll enter CTE programs. They're lacking those same basic skills. So trying to create these in a way where not only are we advancing our adult ed students through this career pathway more rapidly and more successfully, we're also filling and supporting through whatever infrastructures we create those gaps and those needs of the students that enter directly into those CTE programs. The benefits to your program. Research shows that we're going to have higher program retention, the things that we're doing to keep students, and students are going to persist longer, meaning they're going to keep coming to school despite the obstacles and challenges with it when we put these things in place. Some of those include setting long-term goals. Again, I'm not just here to learn English. I'm not just here to get my GED. I'm here to get my certificates and completion in this post-secondary program and get a high-paying career. Beginning these starting career pathways and examining career options and conducting cost-benefit analysis will help these students persist through the struggles that otherwise, if those things weren't occurring, may lead to them dropping out and giving up. Classwork, as referenced and mentioned earlier, based around student needs and goals. So my student needs and my goals, yeah, I need to learn my basic skills. I need my basic academic skills. I need my basic literacy. I need to learn the language. but what are my long-term goals and how can we incorporate those? And if we spend all of our time talking academic language and not building in some of those employability skills and specific occupational skills, we're losing those students or we're drawing out their need for that learning. So aligning our programs and our services with the life context of what those students are interested in, rather than what we may be interested in or what we like. And we'll touch on that a little bit more later when we talk about the different models. Adapting your curriculum to meet the needs of the students. That's going to make them realize that what you're doing in class on a daily basis aligns with their long-term goals, and it's going to give them the motivation to continue. So, you know, it's a benefit for the student because they're continuing, but it's a benefit to your program because we have that higher enrollment, that higher retention, and those higher success rates with what we're doing with the students. So transition, historically speaking, has been a step-by-step process. And what occurs is we complete and we reach our adult education goal. So I've learned English and I've completed ESOL, or I've met my minimum basic skills scores, or I've attained my GED, and I'm going to move on to my post-secondary opportunities. So traditionally, adult ed, we say, okay, we did our job. Here's your high five, great job, and we wish you luck as you move on to take part in whatever post-secondary opportunity that you're going to take advantage of. What that does is it decreases success rates because the students don't have a support system as they move to the next step. It also increases the time it takes to complete because they're doing this training and learning one step at a time. So what we're trying to do now is we're trying to, you know, get our students through their basic skills attainment, CTE program completion, certificate attainment, and really help them even with landing a high-paying career placement. And all of those things combined, if we can build an infrastructure that supports them all simultaneously, will lead to better success rates with our students, because that's really what they're looking for. The challenge is not just a success rate, but how do we really do that in a way that's going to speed up and accelerate this thing based on the student needs and what the students want. So that'll bring us into our different models. And I think everyone's pretty familiar with the different ways that we can implement IET or that have been discussed on the way that it should be implemented. The fully integrated model has been talked about like it's the gold standard. This is the real way that you're going to accelerate for the student in the most optimum way. It's going to join an occupational skills instructor and a basic skills instructor in the same classroom at the same time. They will co-plan together and they will co-teach together. This will bring in the ABE teacher to give workforce skills support. So the ABE teacher is not just talking about academics and language, but they're also supporting with some of those basic occupational skills. I do want to flip this a little bit too, though, because it is important to be aware that the heavy lift is not only on the adult education teacher, it also lands on the CTE teacher. So we have the adult teacher, they're supporting those occupational skills learning objectives. The CTE teacher should also be presenting information in a way that supports the adult education needs of their students. So they're not only CTE instructors and experts within their fields, they also need to be open to the idea of implementing instructional strategies that support those basic skills attainment needs of the students that are now in their fully integrated IET model. So this really calls for a solid partnership between an adult ed instructor and a CTE instructor to make sure that this is going to actually work. They're going to collaborate and plan together and teach within the same classroom, and they combine to form a single set of learning objectives. So we're going to have one lesson plan between the both of us, but that one lesson plan is going to have goals for the basic skills, for employability skills, and for occupational skills. So that's what's going to come out as your single set of learning objectives. IPDE has had some other trainings and they do have some tools that you can utilize as a lesson planning form to create these single set of learning objectives. And that's really going to be a continuing theme that you see as we go through these other IET models, is no matter which model that you feel is most appropriate for your school and your setting and your district, you're going to still want to come back to that single set of learning objectives. You're not going to teach basic skills one day and then work on employability skills the next day. And then on Wednesday, we're going to get to the occupational skills. You're really trying to combine activities that are going to address all three of those simultaneously. So we'll go ahead and we'll look at the partially integrated model next. This one's a little bit more, a little easier to implement because there's less demands on the instructor's time, on the scheduling as a school, trying to figure out how we get all these sections squeezed in and scheduled simultaneously. So this one should be a little bit easier to implement, but still ideal because the general ed teacher and the CTE instructor will still be working collaboratively to design that single set of learning objectives. So the big difference here is in this instance, you should still have some co-planning together, but you will not have co-teaching in this model. The occupational skills CTE instructor will be teaching for a portion of the day or a portion of the student's scheduled time. And the basic skills instructor will be teaching for a different portion of the student's scheduled time. Now, they're still working on that same single set of learning objectives. They should be working through the same activities together through that co-planning model. But this does provide some more flexibility for those teachers to implement based on the scheduling needs of the students, but also the scheduling and time demands placed on those teachers. So this is a good model. It's just not happening simultaneously. It does give you a lot more flexibility, not only for the operational considerations, but also gives you some more flexibility when we start looking at, you're going to have a classroom of students and they may not all want the same CTE program. So how can we support multiple programs simultaneously with one adult ed instructor? And there is some flexibility to consider that and try and work that in through some of the implementations with this model. And then finally, this is one that I really want to spend a lot of time today on, because this is a lot of the language recently has been geared towards all subjects, all levels. So how do we bring IET models to the early literacy classes, the early language learning classes? And one way to envision that through an IET model or even a pre-IET is through the one instructor model, which would be students are enrolled in an AGE course. They're learning their basic skills through carefully cultivated occupational skills material, opportunities to practice and build their employability skills. There is no need for co-planning because the one instructor will be tasked with creating activities that incorporate building their basic skills, building their employability skills, and beginning to touch on the foundational knowledge of those occupational skills. So this could include career exploration. This could be the beginning of their career pathway. This could be the single instructor pulling CTE frameworks from FLDOE website to find out what some of that basic occupational skills terminology is, to find out what some of those foundational academic, mathematical, and literature skills could be, and to start to include those into those programs, even at the earliest levels of those different subjects and different levels. And then we can build that up. I know traditionally we didn't begin to start envisioning IET until, GED level or level 4, level 5 in ESOL. So this is a way to start to, bring this down to these other teachers that maybe traditionally have not viewed themselves as workforce instructors, but the shifts that are occurring right now is that we are all in adult education workforce instructors. So wondering now that we've looked at some of these different models, we've faced a multitude, depending on your district, your school, your area. We know that implementing IET programming has brought many, many challenges. So just wondering what some of those challenges are for you all. If you could share those in your questions, that would be great. And I'm just going to go ahead and look at some of these as we look. I'll share some of the ones that we've had, because we've certainly had it at my school and in my district more challenges than we have anything else. And we certainly, it is a work in progress, and we're trying to develop and provide more and more opportunities. And everything that we try, we walk away with new learning from it, and trying to figure out, okay, well, how do we adjust? How do we take that in? And how do we improve what we're doing so that we have better and quicker student outcomes? And I see some of the chat that's coming in is trying to get some partnering opportunities with the CTE teacher, trying to get investment from the adult education teacher, and trying to get investment from the CTE teacher where they're collaborative and they're agreeing that this is actually our outcome, because change is hard. So this is different. Trying to get some what the local needs assessment and the employer needs are. And adult general education. AGE stands for adult general education. So I'm just using that as a general term to as an umbrella to talk about, you know, our academic programs and our basic skills and our ESOL programs. Okay, trying to find the curriculum for the occupational skills clusters and a collaborative approach to trying to figure out what that's going to actually look like, so that everybody's not scrambling around doing it on their own. That's a great point. Okay, we've got a few more in here talking about the cost of implementation, which is absolutely correct, especially when you have 2 instructors in one classroom. The logistics, which could include the timing of the scheduling of your programs when the students are available versus when the courses are available, especially now that you're looking at trying to schedule them into multiple sections. And then figuring out what those student interests are. You know, if your program and your local needs assessment identifies 20 or more occupational areas and career clusters these students are going to go into, how are you going to address all of those in one classroom? So these are all great points that you all are bringing up. We have a little bit of a list here too of some other things that we've noticed and some that you've mentioned here in the same process. And cost keeps coming up, definitely. Cost to student, cost to the school. Time demands for an accelerated program. Sometimes our students are taking care of families. They have full-time jobs. So we can't give them an accelerated program that's going to touch on 3 major goals, which is, again, their basic skills, their employability skills, and their occupational skills. So we don't have a magic wand to instill those in our students. We are going to need some time with them within the program. So what is the time demand for this program and for them to be able to participate, and how do we offer that in a way that they're available to? And maybe we've taken some clues right now during this pandemic. Maybe that's giving us some additional ideas on how to go ahead and get over that hurdle. Student availability, we just talked about. Accessibility of career and technical instructors. So if I'm working in a community school and we're not connected to a technical college, and I'm trying to co-plan or get some insight from the CTE, somebody mentioned, what is the availability and accessibility of partnering with CTE instructors? So that's some legwork on our end to have to either forge ahead with some of those partnerships and relationships, or becoming familiar enough with those frameworks and starting to bring in some curriculum where we can do these single set of learning objectives on our own, with the end goal of, as they increase down the line, getting those partnerships and those pipelines going. So again, the frameworks knowledge. I think this one here, mind shift for adult general ed. A lot of times we just say our students don't want that. You know, they don't come here looking for that. They came here to learn English. But we have to step back and say that may be true for one or two students. Certainly, I've looked out in the student parking lot before, and I've seen a Tesla sitting out there. So yeah, that student may not be here for a high-paying career, but I don't think that we can use that as a reason not to set up our programs in the context of that is our overarching goal. That is the service that we need to be providing, and that's what is going to improve the lives of most of our students, and certainly the ones that were identified before as being low income, low skilled population members that we're trying to give them more economic mobility. So, trying to just get away from this idea that, when we've had a student in our class that didn't need that or didn't want that, that prevents us from providing this type of opportunity for the rest of our students. And finally, implementation challenges. Really, we're talking about a lot of monumental shifts, not just in mindset, but in the infrastructure and operation of our program. So how do we go ahead and get started with that? So looking at some of these things and some of these ideas, how do we get started with that is looking at and reflecting on your current practices in your programs. What are the processes and infrastructure to help the students dream bigger and set loftier goals? Are you doing intake surveys? Are you helping them identify what those career pathways may be? Are those conversations taking place? And are the extended opportunities for these students to take classes and pursue those occurring that fit not only their desires for their goals, but their mobility issues with work and their kids? Are your programs being offered online, at night, on Saturdays? Do those align with the CTE programs and availability of those programs where they can go ahead and start looking at, actual credentials and certifications, stackable certifications, etc., and trying to figure out what are those support needs and how are we going to continue to close the achievement and employment gaps for our students by starting to look at how do we start to change and look at some of those things if they don't align with what the needs are going to be to successfully implement this across the board, not just with the pre-IT and the lower levels in a single teacher model, but as you start to get up where you're actually working towards those certifications and programs and trying to complete them through those partnerships in the higher levels. I think a big challenge for all of us is changing the mindset of all of our stakeholders by continuing to promote the idea that we are all workforce educators, that, we're looking at creating accelerated and more successful pathways into regionalized, high demand, high paying careers. We're going to do so using common language, workforce preparation markers, and creating single set of learning objectives. And the answer can't be our students aren't ready for that. Our students don't come to us wanting that. I want to refer back to where we talked about the storms occurring in our students' lives. If I'm worried about where my next meal is coming from or how I'm going to pay my next rent payment, I'm certainly not looking at post-secondary opportunities. I'm just trying to get over that first hurdle. So our students are going to come and they're going to say, I'm here to learn English. And it's our job to tell them the real reason that they came to our school. Yeah, that's the reason that you're here for now, and that's your first and primary objective. But the real reason you came here is so that you can get a high-paying career and give yourself and your family economic mobility, and we can start to close some of these gaps that exist in our local workforce areas. And finally, taking action by eliminating excuses like our students don't want that. This is a growth mindset concept, but the easiest way out of a big, heavy, difficult change is if there's a reason or an excuse where the change doesn't need to occur. If our students don't want that, then I can just go back to my classroom and I can continue to do what I've always done. But we really want to avoid continuing to do what we've always done because we know that that creates lots of challenges for our students to get on the career pathway, to transition into these multiple opportunities. We all have seen the transition rates. So if we continue to use it through the transition process like we did before, it has not been largely successful at making a difference from these students' lives. So trying to avoid, and certainly I don't even like the term excuses. I would prefer to say reasons or challenges that we've faced, but we can't let those paralyze our decisions and our actions. We've got to start taking some initial steps to provide opportunities to consolidate and condense these three major goals that come with the IET program of giving our students a basic skills, employability skills, and starting to build the foundation of occupational skills, stackable credentials, so that by the time they're finishing their ESOL and language learning, they're also walking away with certificates and high demand and employability areas. So that was really the major crux of what I wanted to share today, was giving you an idea of what IET is, why it's important, how we can implement it across our entire programs, what the benefits will be for the students and for our programs, and really just to give you an idea and some insight of the direction we're going. And not only is it an expectation for all programs, all subjects, and all levels, but that it is possible with some legwork and some mind shift change on our parts. And now there are some tools, and I want to get into the tools that you can use, because I'm not just going to end this now and say, okay, now give you a high five and say good luck. We've talked about not wanting to do that in other areas. So IPDA's got a lot of other resources that have already been in place and already shared. So you can certainly go to the IPDA trainings and webinars that have been recorded and already posted. You'll be getting this PowerPoint afterwards. Certainly go ahead and click on or navigate to the IET resource page on the IPDA website. A couple of recommended webinars that have already taken place and that are up there already loaded and recorded. Transition Academies, preparing adult education students for career and technical education programs. And another one, once you really start looking at implementation wholeheartedly, developing a single set of learning objectives in IET. You're going to get some good lesson planning tools and templates in that one. So there's quite a good number of resources on the IPDA website. And then just go ahead and moving on here. A couple of other areas where you can pull the frameworks, not only for adult ed and the minimum and the basic skills courses, ESOL, but also the CTE curriculum frameworks. Your teachers aren't going to be familiar with these. And that's another reason that it's going to be a challenge, because we don't know if I don't have that partnership built with the CTE instructor, then you're not really going to be able to get started unless you go and start looking at some of these frameworks and having those conversations with their students about where they're headed in alignment with what the local needs assessments are saying. So with that, I know there have been some questions in the chat, and we'll get to some of those, and anything else that you all may be interested to ask about. Again, like you, this is a learning process for all of us. I do see a question about stackable credentials, and it's a great question, because what does that look like, especially for an early language learner or early literacy learner? And so going in reverse, if you have a student that wants to be a registered nurse, so where do they start if they're with you and they're at level 3 ESOL and I want to be a registered nurse? Well, yeah, we're going to continue to teach them English, because they're going to need that. They're going to need the academic and technical vocabulary to get started and move along that path. They're going to need familiarity with the health career cluster. So how do we get them to the RN? And you could do that through some stackable credentials. So looking at, maybe I start with certified nursing assistant, then I would go to LPN program, and then I would go to RN program. So again, what do we do with level 3 ESOL? Maybe you work them through a CPR course and get them credentialed in CPR, where they start to just acquire credentials working towards that long-term goal. So just as one example, try and go through. Question about, can you give some specific examples that were used at my school? Currently, the way we are trying to implement IET at my school is through partially integrated program where we are giving basic skills support to our students that are spending a majority of their time in their CTE program. So because you cannot, they have to be scheduled separately into those. So we have a lot of either El Cate or Jedi, and not to get into all of that because it's a whole nother can of worms. But they'll be scheduled with that for additional support. And then they'll go through their CTE program, and then they'll serve as, the co-planning will exist between those teachers and trying to contextualize instruction through their basic skills. What we're currently doing now is exploring the implementation of the single teacher model, and trying to do the mindset shift so that all of our teachers begin to take ownership and invest in the idea that we're all workforce education teachers, and trying to contextualize our instruction, not necessarily on, what the students, what the teachers think the students may be interested in or what the teacher may enjoy. Let me give an example. We know that there's a whole lot of academic standards that we need to work through with these students. But we also have an overarching goal of trying to accelerate their process through the program and providing what they need, based on the research, because if our instruction aligns with their needs and their goals, they're gonna persist longer. So yeah, I mean, I think exposing them to literature is great. I think it makes them well-rounded. They're probably going to be better Trivial Pursuit players. Is it not? I'm not saying throw the baby out with the bathwater, but I recommend, and with the teachers I work with and in our programs, we really need to move forward with a sense of urgency and desperation with our students, because their day-to-day lives are not easy, and our students are having a difficult time now more than ever. So instead of going through literature and having, building their reading comprehension skills through literature pieces, using nonfiction text, using text that aligns with the career cluster, and really trying to, get 2 or 3 birds at the same time, because the work that we're doing in this field is literally saving lives, and the teachers and support staff are literally heroes. But trying to prioritize those, with a sense of urgency, because we really are trying to accelerate this for them, because it is a struggle every single day, and approaching every single lesson plan with that sense of urgency, because every minute in the classroom was a priority, and a goal that the student set other things aside to come for. So really maximizing that time based on what's going to pay them and give them the most dividends at the end, in filling these gaps and providing more economic mobility for them. Okay, so yeah, I will, June, can you put my contact information in the chat? Because I definitely want to go ahead and send that, and I want to be available if anybody has any further questions outside of this, or just a phone call and just have a discussion.
Yeah, you got it.
There's a question: what time frame in the day do you expect these students to attend? And the question is 5 days a week. And I think that's where we all have to go back and look at the infrastructure of our programs and our districts and our regions, and trying to determine what's going to work best, and what those students' needs are, and how are we going to meet those needs. I don't think that's going to end up being part of the criteria or part of the model of what this should look like. I think that's going to be individual decisions based on your students and your infrastructure, and that reflection that we talked about. So that could be different from instance to instance. Right now, we offer it 5 days a week during the daytime. But when we look at that reflection piece, and we start to wonder about, well, how can we reach more students? Because to be completely transparent right now, our IET program is a pocket program with a minimum number of students compared to all of our students that are in our adult ed programs. And what we're trying to really look in the mirror right now and determine, how do we bring these benefits, this acceleration, this higher success rate, and apply it to all of our students in this program, rather than just this select group that has said that, okay, they've agreed to come 30 hours a week, Monday through Friday. Well, all of our entire adult ed population doesn't have that flexibility. So how do we provide this program to them, and really being creative in how we roll that out? Because at the end of the day, if you have those components, then that's what makes it an IET program. And in some cases, if a student's only available 15 hours a week, well, I want to accelerate what I can get done in that 15 hours a week, and accelerate their process just as much as I'm accelerating for a student that is available 30 hours a week. It may take longer for the student that's available 15 hours, but it should still be a sense of urgency, and it should be an acceleration by combining those multiple objectives into a single set of learning objectives, and combining support services into one. So hopefully that answers the question a little bit, with kind of avoiding the question. And we have a question: are you contextualizing instruction at the ABE level based upon career clusters sectors? And I would say currently we are not at the school where I work, but that is our goal and that is our movement. And we are in the planning stages of how we make that a reality. And I think that's the task that we're all faced with right now. And exploring virtual options to provide the CTE portion, absolutely, 100%. Exploring those type of options is definitely a way that we can reach more students. I think the pandemic has taught us that we can extend this outside the classroom, and figure out ways to, within the time frames and the walls of the school is not the only ways that we can reach our students. So I think exploring those virtual options for the CTE portion, in conjunction with the virtual option for the adult ed portion, and trying to see what we can make out with that. And I don't know, it looks like you've been answering some of these as we go, June. So I apologize if I missed any.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brian. I love the interaction today. It was really great. All of the questions that came through and the comments. So we really appreciate that. Just remember, you can always contact us at info@ipday.org, and we will continue this conversation and be able to address any questions that you might have in the future. But before you leave us today, I wanted to again thank you so much, Brian, for this presentation. There's now a poll that is appearing on your screen. If you could please just take a minute to answer these 3 short questions. Your feedback is so important to us, and we want to capture that. So take a few minutes to answer these 3 questions. While you're doing that, I'll remind you of our next webinar, which will be conducted on February 24th. Instructional rigor online, staying on the path of student achievement. So we've heard a lot about, online rigor and all this. So I don't think you're going to want to miss this one either. It's February 24th next week. So until then, I wish all of you a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you so much for what you do and all your support for IPDAY.